All right, let's just jump right in. Think about the phone in your pocket. The aluminum, the copper, all those rare earth elements, they're the exact same materials we need to build a greener future. We're talking electric vehicles, wind turbines, the whole shebang. But, and this is a big but, getting those materials from the ground, it's an incredibly carbon-intensive process.
So that's the huge question at the heart of this whole explainer. How do we actually solve this paradox? How can we build a cleaner world with materials that, as of right now, are a big part of the climate problem? Well, the answer, it turns out, is less about digging for more and more about rethinking what we already have.
And just to give you a sense of the scale here, a full 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from producing brand new, virgin materials. That is a staggering number. And it's exactly why this idea of circularity is shifting from just a nice concept to an absolute strategic imperative. And that leads us right into what we can call the high carbon paradox. How on earth are we facing a future with potential shortages of critical materials, while at the very same time we're throwing away mountains of those exact same materials every single year? It just doesn't add up. Okay, this slide right here perfectly captures how absurd our current system is. Just look at copper. By 2035, the world is projected to be short about 4 million metric tons a year. And yet, every single year, we lose between 4 and 5 million metric tons of copper scrap that's just never collected or recycled. We are literally creating our own scarcity problem by throwing away the solution. It's wild.
So, who's trying to break this insane cycle? Well, enter Apple. They looked at this massive inefficiency not just as a problem, but as a huge opportunity. So they decided to set what you could basically call a circular moonshot, a goal to completely reinvent their industrial model from the ground up.
And you know, this wasn't some overnight thing. They set this audacious goal way back in 2017 to one day use only 100% recycled or renewable materials. It's a long-term vision for sure, but they're making real, measurable progress on their way to that big 2030 target of being carbon neutral across their entire supply chain.
So as of this year, they've hit a pretty significant milestone. 24% of all the materials in their products now come from recycled sources. And this chart, it kind of tells the whole story, right? Almost a quarter of the way there is a huge deal, but it also paints a really clear picture of how much road is still left to travel to get to 100.
Okay, so how are they actually going to get there? I mean, it's not like you can just wish for more recycled materials to appear. It's about systematically unlocking this giant wasted resource. And to do that, they've laid out a really clear three-part strategy to make these circular supply chains a reality.
First, you have to know what you're up against, and the barriers are different for each material. For aluminum, the big problem is sorting. Most of it gets thrown into these mixed pools, which just tanks the quality. For rare earths, it's a technology problem. We simply don't have the tech to recover them at scale. And for copper, it all comes down to collection. We just aren't getting enough old electronics back to get that valuable copper out.
And this is where their strategy gets so smart. For every one of those barriers, there's a specific unlock. To fix the sorting mess, you need deep market mapping and a ton of data to find the good stuff. To bridge that tech gap, you got to invest your own money in R&D. And to close the collection gap, that's impossible to do alone, so you need massive, cross-industry collaboration. It's just a beautifully logical plan.
And the payoff for actually solving these things? It's enormous. Just look at these numbers. Using recycled aluminum slashes CO2 emissions by a jaw-dropping 95%. Solving the tech problem could let us recover 85% of the rare earth magnet scrap we're currently just losing. And better collection, that could close almost a third of that global copper gap we were just talking about. The potential here isn't just big, it is an absolute game changer.
So that brings us to that tech piece. You know, when the technology you need to move forward just doesn't exist yet. You can't sit around and wait for somebody else to invent it. Apple realized that to crack their toughest recycling nuts, like pulling out those tiny, powerful rare earth magnets, they had to start building the solutions themselves. And this is where it gets really cool. Meet Dave and Taz. No, they're not characters in a movie. They are actual disassembly robots that Apple developed in-house. They're purpose-built to do the super delicate work of rescuing these incredibly valuable materials from old devices with a speed and a precision that, frankly, humans just can't match.
But even with an army of innovative robots, Apple is super clear about one thing. There is no way they can do this alone. Trying to transform a global supply chain is not a solo mission. It demands a fundamental shift across entire industries, which leads us to the collaboration imperative. This quote from the source material really is the heart of this entire section. Think about it. One company asking for recycled materials is a good start, but a dozen companies, 100 companies, all demanding recycled content? That creates a market. That creates real momentum. Collaboration literally multiplies the impact of any one company's efforts.
And you know, this isn't just lip service. They are backing it up with serious action. They're helping lead industry alliances, they're partnering directly with recyclers on the ground to improve collection, and they're even publishing their own technical guides for anyone to use. That new partnership with MP Materials for 2025, it's a perfect example. They're helping build the very infrastructure the whole industry needs to process these recycled materials at scale.
So, let's zoom out and be really clear about the big takeaway here. This is not just about sustainability reports or being green. Circularity is a fundamental shift in business strategy. It's about building resilience into your supply chain, protecting it from global shocks and price swings. It's about unlocking huge cost savings. This is the new strategic advantage, and powerful climate action just happens to be a fantastic outcome of a really smart business decision.
Which really leaves us with this final thought to chew on. For decades, our entire industrial world has been built on one idea: extract more. But the future has to be about using what we already have, just better. And that forces us to ask a totally different question. Not just, what new thing can we make, but how will we design our entire world, from our phones to our cities, for recovery, from the very start?